So with the trilogy of Jak and Daxter now finished, it was time to start looking to new horizons. No, wrong Sony franchise. It was time to move on to the PS3, and if you know anything about the early PS3 besides the insane price point, it was that it was a nightmare to develop for. So Naughty Dog needed time to figure out the system before development of their next series, Uncharted, began. So in the meantime, they got back to their old habits and made their fourth game on the system a racing game. Mostly because they wanted to expand the driving mechanic in Jak 3, but you know. And thus, Jak X came to be. To be honest, there's not much to pull from the development of this one. From what we hear, it was a really smooth development cycle. The only real fun fact I would say is that this is the first game from the studio not to involve Naughty Dog founders Andy Gavin and Jason Rubin. That's about the most you're gonna get from this one. Well, okay, one more fun fact I learned only when making this video. Ratchet Deadlock was going to be a combat racing game as well, until Insomniac learned that Jak X was basically going to be the same thing, and then that project shifted focus into what we know today. So, there you go. Fun fact. Now, I was originally going to look at the game on PS4, since it actually got a port there unlike the PS3, but I noticed there were some weird lag spikes that I didn't remember in the PS2, so then I went to get my PS2 copy, but then I unfortunately learned I now have the save glitch, where the game will just stay on this screen and not move forward. So, okay, onto an emulator, but wait! The icons on the side don't exactly look right either. Okay, back to the PS4, I guess. I just want to record some Jak X, man. I did get a PS5 after I recorded all my footage, and I did notice a bit better performance on there in case you were curious. The day and age where you need a PS5 to run a PS2 game well. Now, one other thing about Jak X on the PS2 is that it actually did have some fun memory card stuff. If you had save data for any previous Jak game, you could play as that version of Jak in multiplayer. Which I love the idea of Jak 1 Jak being thrusted into these death races having no idea what he's getting into. He's a mute, but I think he's gonna have some particular words doing this. Oh shit! Tragic. But this also included Ratchet if you had Ratchet Deadlock data, and if you had a PSP with Daxter, you could get the characters from that game and this Daxter mobile. It's kinda creepy, not gonna lie. But for these just being PS2 emulations, I didn't expect those to be in this version, but lo and behold, all of the content is still in the game and keeps the memory card idea intact. If you have a Jak game on PS4, you'll get that version of Jak. If you have the Uncharted Nathan Drake collection, you will get the Daxter stuff. And if you have Ratchet PS4, bam! Deadlocked Ratchet. I have to give them props for not only keeping the content, but doing it in a way that keeps the original spirit of that alive. I know nowadays these kind of crossover stuff would be done via DLC or some limited time store item, or save data from a previous game that gives you negligible stuff that feels so whatever. But part of me does miss that feeling of being rewarded for keeping with a series or trying other games out. Like the most recent example I could think of that was worth something was the dearly beloved from Melody of Memories in Smash Bros. That's the best I got. This video is mostly going over Jak X single player. I didn't really have anyone near me, and the PS4 version doesn't include online play of any kind. Even though Ratchet Deadlocked and Ratchet 3 on the PS3 had it, so feels like a missed opportunity, but the game does have a full-fledged campaign mode with its own story mode, so let's take a look at that. It's been about a year since the end of Jak 3, and the group are invited to a reading of Crew's will, held by his daughter.
Crew? Reproduced?
Moving on from that image, they all toast to Crew and then a video plays of his will, with him saying he always wanted to win the Crash City Grand Prix, and everyone in this room will be racing on his behalf. Mainly because that bottle that they had is a slow-acting poison and they will only get the antidote if they win. Even in death, he will still get the last laugh. You know, it's kind of funny how Crew had more of an overall impact than every big bad in this series if you think about it. Even Rain, his daughter, didn't know about the poison either as she drank it too. So the group gears up and starts racing, while GT Blitz, the host of the entire sport, is milking them for all their worth as a mysterious Mizo, apparently another crime lord, is hiring racers from all over, putting a bounty on Jak and crew's crew. Mainly because Jak and company continue to do well, and they're the only wildcard team. Everyone else has been in Mizo's pocket fixing races for years, and this is the one year he can't afford to lose. As found in Crew's diary, Mizo and Crew were at each other's necks, and to avoid a full-on gang war, they made a bet that at the next Crash City Grand Prix, whoever team wins gets to run both cities and the other has to get out, upsetting Rain because she's seeing a side of her father she never saw before when he was alive. Mizo continues to make his presence known until giving Jak a chance to walk away, but they don't do it, and then the race after, Jak finds his weapon systems have been tampered with, and you can't use any weapons in that race. I like that story integration. It's a really interesting event. Jak does end up winning the whole thing, even though I tied with GT Blitz on the final Grand Prix. I couldn't help but find that funny. Rain says she was trying to flush out Mizo, who ends up being GT Blitz, who steals the antidote until Jak takes out his car and steals it back. Mizo says his father left his family to pursue racing, and his family vowed to own the whole sport out of spite, with Jak leaving him to die.
You have a habit of leaving people to die, don't you? You get used to it.
Well, with everyone having much less poison in their system, they go off and party as Rain goes to start cleaning things up and saying thanks to the group, with the game ending with her accidentally leaving Crew's diary behind, revealing Crew told her to pour only 3 seconds into her glass so she wouldn't get the poison and would force Jak's crew into their scheme, meaning Rain was fully in on exploiting them and continuing Crew's legacy from the start. Oh, yeah. Just wrapping my head around how the racing game has the best plot of the series. I'm not joking, I actually like this story the most out of all the games, I'd say, which isn't saying much for 1 or 3 in my opinion, but like Jak 2, it's a pretty simple plot, but what makes it work is the cast. It feels like everyone gets a moment to shine here, like Sig putting his life on the line even though he's not poisoned, Kira coming out of the broom closet and being a key player in the team this time, I'm happy to see that. And even if everyone isn't super plot important, they'd still participate and still get bits, which leads to fun interactions. It's a surprisingly chill atmosphere despite the cast in their dire circumstances. Even leaning to stuff like Pecker and GT Blitz being at each other's throats almost the entire time once they show up.
I've done some digging, G-Baby, and I've uncovered more information about the rumors of that big underworld bet. Someone is manipulating the sport.
You know, I've been covering this sport for decades. Do you honestly think you can come onto my show and make me look like a fool? Well, you.
It's easily Pecker's best game, and I think it's the one he's utilized the best in.
I'll give you the final word.
Well, GT.
Oops, sorry, that was more than one word. That's Studio Debating 101, baby. Oh yeah, you just got schooled.
Birds do not school. They flock. So flock off!
It's interesting how this and Ratchet Deadlock kinda went for similar tones with their 4th game, and in both cases, I think the two ended up with some of the more interesting settings for both of the franchises. But also, in comparison, Deadlock had a much better big bad villain with Fox than Mizo. He doesn't really play it up as much as someone like Fox and ends up feeling a bit generic. Especially with his GT Blitz persona not having much to it and his motivations being rather basic. However, I will give them props when it comes to Rain and the backstab. You can tell if you're really looking for it, but she does a great job of selling it. As she learns more about her father and what he did, her reactions seem to be legit and even had a full falling out with Jak's crew to eventually come back together for the final race. Until the very end, and I remember that moment of feeling outplayed, so good job on that, Rain, you get that one. And this is all just a story for a racing game, so let's dive into the rest. Jak X is still a great looking game for the system. The environments are solid and all represent different parts of Jak's world well. You even get this nice overhead view when you're racing in single player mode, and dialogue from each of the characters describing the mission for you. There's only a handful of repeats and all the other ones are unique to each event, so it adds a nice touch to the storytelling even in the menus. I love the sense of speed this game portrays. It really makes you feel like you're just enough in control, but one mistake can send you right off. It's really portrayed well by Daxter as he just hangs on for dear life every time you turn. I don't know why he can't just be on Jak's shoulder or something like that during the races, but oh well. Or how when you or someone else blows up, it does this whole zoom in slow-mo shot that shows all the death and destruction until said person is up and running 3 seconds after. Don't think, just accept. And on PS4 it still looks good, but again, I wish it could make up its mind on the frame rate on that platform. Also with this emulation they res up everything, but some things did not transition well, mainly the racers. Oh my god. In the original, they could mostly hide it better, but here, oh no, they on full display and they look hilariously bad in this port. Oh, poor Ashlyn girl, are you okay? Do you need to see someone? Actually, while talking about how the characters look, a lot of the characters got redesigned, and I'm gonna be real, I'm not huge on a lot of them. Jak just kinda looks like he has hockey pads for days.
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Sure, buddy. I also find it hilarious every game since Jak 2, his hair just gets shorter and shorter. By the next one, I think he's gonna go full Kratos, beard and all. Sig is mostly just him without his armor on. Ashlyn, I feel, is just over-designed, and don't even get me started on Torn. Here's him in Jak 2 and 3, here's him in Jak X. You see the problem? Good, let's move on. The voice acting is still great, as per usual, including GT Blitz, voiced by, I'm guessing, Phil Lamar. Where is it? Hey, there we go! Oh, right. Should talk about that. So, Kira's voice actress, Anna Garduno, was replaced by Tara Strong in Jak 3. I didn't really mention it there, cause, well, she only got 3 lines. I don't think it was really worth bringing up there. But here it's a lot more pronounced. Though, looking into it, maybe I should have mentioned it more in Jak 3. Because from what I can gather up, Garduno was replaced from what it seems to be contract disputes. So because these disputes were still going on and they needed to get Jak 3 out the door, they basically cut out Kira's role almost entirely. And since they already had Tara Strong for Seam, they just had her come in for the few lines that Kira had, and I guess negotiations fell through, so Strong stayed Kira. So add another ding onto Jak 3 Rush development cycle. But back on topic, I think Tara does a good job in the role and worked out fine. Though I do think Garduno's voice felt a bit more unique, but it's overall fine. As for the soundtrack, I actually have some stuff to talk about here this time. Well, after the game blares the THX sound from the start. But for the actual soundtrack itself, it seems so weird to me looking back that it took till the 3rd game of this dark Jak style to commit to hard rock, and I'm glad that they did. It's not that the soundtrack in the trilogy was bad, but they were just kinda there. This one has a lot more songs that fit the situation and tone that they're going for a lot more. Like this sense of fully committing to the bit now, especially that intro. Oh, this is so mid-2000s for all the right reasons. So yeah, Jak X presentation-wise lives up to being the final Naughty Dog game on the system. So now how about the actual gameplay? So Jak X is pretty similar to other kart racers, Mario Kart, Crash Team Racing being the obvious comparisons, but there are a few things that make Jak X stand out from its competition. Every type of eco is represented by a different thing your car can do. Green eco acts as your health, and without that you explode in a blaze of glory. Blue eco acts like your turbo, kind of like Jak 1, and you can also get it through power sliding. Yellow are items that you can shoot in front of you, reds are ones you can shoot behind, that can also be worked defensively to stop yellow items from attacking you. And finally, after killing enough, you can get Dark Eco, which when you have enough, you get supercharged versions of all your weapons. Think kind of like Crash Team Racing, how when you get 10 Wampa Fruit, you get a powered up item there. There's races and battles, and there's a lot of game types in each, so let's start the list. For the races, you got your normal races, Grand Prix at the end of each chapter, Death Race where you shoot up as many cars as you can while racing around the track, Freeze Rally, a time trial-like event where you're hitting tokens that freezes the timer a certain amount, again, kinda like CTR's trials, Rush Hour, which is like Death Race except the cars are coming towards you instead of away, and Turbo Dash where you need to grab a power cell from Jak 1. and turbo with them until you get a meter and launch them where they act like a red shell to anything in front of you. Though you're also given a mine to help defend yourself. In battle, we got deathmatch and capture the flag, pretty self-explanatory, sport hunt where you need to kill a certain amount of a specific target, artifact race where you need to grab more artifacts than the opponents, and while not in the main campaign, there's also assassin where you need to kill your specified target in order to score before you get to the next one. In single player, the game is broken into 4 cups, with you having to do events to get into the qualifiers for each said cup. And when winning races, you'll earn precursor stones that you can use to unlock extras or upgrade your vehicle. And of course you got your multiplayer shenanigans up to 4 players and such, but that's about it for the gameplay of Jak X. So what did this game do right? Jak X has a lot of good going for it. I like the majority of the events. Like Freeze Rally, I always preferred this setup compared to the normal time trial. It feels a lot more engaging and forces me to take multiple routes through a course. The point ones are also fun too, like Turbo Dash. First, it's great seeing power cells make their return, but I also love this idea of having to keep boosting to get to a point, cause they tend to space these out, so right as you score a point, the next power cell is there, basically meaning you have to be boosting the entire time to play optimally. And in some of these courses, that's a really fun challenge. But honestly, the best mode in the game has to go to Death Race. It's the one I really feel the combat racing part of the title was built around. Using all your weapons to rack up points, taking out everyone in front of you at breakneck speeds, it's a good time. And these score modes also encourage you to still go fast. Every time you clear a lap, you gain a score multiplier, making it so you still want to go as fast as possible. And for Death Race, I was like 100 over the gold requirement every time. The cars feel great to control as well. Again, going back to that feeling of being in control, but at the same time, one mistake from it all going downhill, and makes each race a joy to play. My recording sessions got pretty long as I just kept going, and if I was shy of getting gold, I just went right back in. Another thing I liked is the separation of the item classes. In something like Mario Kart, you'll get into a situation where you keep getting items that don't help you in your current position at all. Jak X's solution is separating them into front and back items to make it much more likely you'll actually get something to help you. In addition, making Dark Eco a good incentive for engaging in combat rather than just passing the opponent. Single player was still a great time thanks to the variety given and the structure, kind of going back to Jak and Daxter 1, oddly enough. What I mean is that you need to get a certain amount of points to get into the qualifiers. The type of event you do to get them, however, doesn't matter. So you can completely skip events if you don't want to deal with them, and it gives the player a lot more flexibility and rewards those constantly getting gold medals. And that's good because certain events and parts of the game aren't quite up to task. Now I feel like my first complaint is very common with racing games, but Jak X does fall into the issue as well. And that would be the rubber banding AI. Yeah, it's pretty strong here. Mostly thanks to one item in particular, the Peacemaker. Basically the blue shell of the game. I swear, it's the item the CPU gets more than anything else. Now you are able to deflect these with certain red items, but usually another one will come right after. And if it's on the final lap with how long the death animation is, that can be a loss right there. Now you can upgrade the cars to deal with these situations, but there's one upgrade I do feel like is overall detrimental to you, and that would be top speed. Mostly because if it gets too high, I feel the cars really start to lose a sense of weight. The speed ends up making your car lighter and it causes them to bounce all over the place and lose control. And no, you can't level the cars down, so if that happened, it was time to move on to another vehicle. That's why I ended up sticking with the more tanky vehicles in this playthrough. They have good speed while still being controllable, and that's a benefit. I could take more hits from the computers while being in first place. And the event I think you feel this the most, my least favorite of the bunch, Rush Hour. Mainly because when you hit a car head on, you will eventually spin out of control and you spend more time fighting the game than doing the event. It's the most janky feeling one in the game, and I never look forward to doing them. I try to avoid them whenever possible. Doesn't help that it just comes off as a weaker version of Death Race. While talking about the events, I do find the battle arenas... I mean, they're not bad, but they aren't great. It's no Double Dash Bomb on Blast or anything like that. They can all feel very samey. They end up feeling more like filler matches. Doesn't help that most of the arenas just don't feel that great to play in either. Some of the race layouts also aren't the best, like the Haven City tracks, mainly the city and the sewers. I feel like the turns are just a bit too narrow. You get blindsided around corners here just a bit too often. I never look forward to playing these ones, and the computer, I notice, tends to have a hard time with these too. But I think there's one overall inconsistency that hurts you more than anything else. Not blowing up. I know that sounds weird, but let me explain. So, usually if you speed too fast into a wall or take a wrong turn, you'll blow up. Sometimes. Other times you'll get stuck, which is far worse as it takes much longer to get yourself unstuck as everyone speeds in front of you, and just one of these can kill an entire race. And again, that tends to happen more when you have that top speed cranked up. Avoid top speeds. Not a good idea. When I started this marathon, I figured Jak X would probably be in the upper half. I remember having fun with it, but when looking back and seeing the other games in the series, I think it might be my favorite one now? So yeah, there might have been some issues, but as a racer with a good story mode, Jak X is solid and consistent in quality. It's the one that I think hits the right tone and atmosphere the studio was trying to chase the past few games. The gameplay is great, even though I think some events feel better than others. Thanks to the game's structure, you can mostly pick and choose what you want, making the journey much more comfortable, and there's enough variation to where you won't get bored. Jak X is a great time with friends or even when playing by yourself in single player, and single player racing games hardly get that much praise from me. Jak X kind of goes to show just because you're a spin-off, that doesn't mean you can't be first in class. So yeah, that was Jak X. Was pleasantly surprised coming back to this one and had a great time doing so. But now we're heading into a bit of Uncharted territory. No, not that now. We have two PSP games next, both of which I have not touched before, so next time we're going to be looking at Daxter. We're kind of 2 and 2 for the series now. Which way is this one going to tip the scale to? Well, only one way to find out, so I'll see you then.